Stefano,
George.
how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Awesome. So where are we?
We are in Kamloops in a co-working space today.
Nice. And what are we about to do?
We are about to have a conversation. Vivacity, some of the stuff that we do, and the journey so far. It's been almost 2 years now, so feels good to just sit down and have a recap, touch point, see, how did we get here and where are we going?
Cool. Well, I'm in.
Let's do it.
Cool. So first of all, maybe name, title, what you do.
Right. I'm Stefano. I am a technical product manager at Vivacity Technologies. On a day-to-day, I get to oversee the engineering team and the product building side of what we do. In addition to the more technical responsibilities, it's also on me to make sure that whatever we're building is aligned with what our clients need and what we're hearing from the industry, so that hopefully it leads to a profitable product and not just something that's fun but sits on a shelf. That's a little bit of what I do on the day-to-day.
Nice.
How about yourself?
So I'm the CEO and founder of Vivacity, and on a day-to-day basis, everything from making sure we're going to stay afloat to hopefully looking out 3 to 6 months ahead of what the strategy looks like and where we're going further afield. So it's a never-ending stop of fun and delight.
Indeed. Thank you for your service. It's great to receive a paycheck.
I don't pay you, my wife does. So,
yes, fair.
So anyway, we've got a few questions and sessions that we're going to go through today.
We do.
And I think you are going to lead the charge on the first set. So
yes, I shall.
Over to you.
Yeah. So the first, I think, broad area we wanted to touch on is around just an intro of Vivacity, kind of the whens, whys, wheres, how, what, those types of questions. So the first question I want to ask you is something that I've wanted to ask you since I started at Vivacity, which is, from your perspective, obviously coming from a career in the IT space, and then choosing to take the risk of starting up a new company and giving that a shot versus, taking your experience, going somewhere well-established, a good paying job, pension, benefits, all that stuff. What was your headspace as you make that decision, and, why choose to go down this path of entrepreneurship? So
I would say there's probably 3 areas that I would point to that sort of had led me to this path. The first area is that in my family there's a good amount of entrepreneurship. My father, who's unfortunately no longer with us, he started a couple of times a company, electrical company. They call them Sparkies in the UK. And although they weren't successful, I'm extremely proud of the fact that he tried, right? And so, my brother's a bit of an entrepreneur. He's had quite a few successful companies, and so there's a bit of a bloodline on that side, I would say. The second area is I feel like I've had a decent amount of experience now, 18 years roughly in the IT sector, and just prior to starting Vivacity, I was the CEO of a data center company here in Kamloops. Ran that for about 4 years, and if anything could go wrong at a company, this was it, basically. Every bad business case should be sort of written about this in terms of where they got to. And when I joined the company 4 years ago, we tried to resurrect it, refinance it, and just gained a huge amount of experience from that. So that was awesome and a great part of that journey for me. And then I guess the final thing is that I've worked at a lot of different companies, and I've always thought about what would be the best environment that I would like to promote and work in myself. And so that's what I'm trying to do here at Vivacity, and just sort of create an environment that I could be proud of and myself work in and look back and go, we created something pretty neat here. So that's why.
Nice. That's a very interesting background. Seems like a bit of family lineage, a bit of having the necessary experience, and a bit of the drive to just, do things differently or give, another way of doing things a try. So,
100%.
Cool. Follow-up question to that. So you decide you're going to start up a company, and obviously you're, I presume, trying to maximize your chances of succeeding at that point. So why start up a company in Kamloops of all places? There's probably bigger markets out there, places with easier access to talent. So why here?
Yeah. Good question, and I think your assumption on maximizing success is probably not too far of a stretch. But yeah, Kamloops to me, I think it's just a wonderful community. I lived in quite a few different big cities over my years, and I have a young family. I was running the data center company here already. My wife and my children all pretty settled, and I feel like in smaller communities like this, you can actually make a bit of a difference, right? You're not lost in the herd of a big city. Plus, like, you have all these wonderful things like no traffic, which is pretty awesome. And so, yeah, I would say that Kamloops has got everything you really need for a community to live in. And as my wife said, it's got a Costco. Yeah. So what else do you need, right? And yeah, so that's why Kamloops made sense. And for the company, our first client was the city of Kamloops. Mm-hmm. So it was just an easy, stepping stone to build Vivacity and then continue to grow. And we have Thompson Rivers University here. We have a decent growing tech pool. And I can't understate the value of the university. It's really awesome. And we're proud to be part of that.
Right. Seems like it's in, as far as the city goes, a bit of a Goldilocks zone of not too small, not too big. Still have, a lot of freedom and ability to make an impact, but you also have all kind of the essentials that you might need to make things work.
100%.
So, nice. Another thing that was really interesting to me starting to work here, from early days of Vivacity, why do you care so much about our core values? I think if I look back to when I started originally, we were doing some work trying to set them. And it was always something that I was passionate about, just, as a young, early career professional looking at big companies and just not really agreeing necessarily with how they were going about things. But I'm curious from your perspective, being, I would presume in some ways probably jaded over, 18 years of industry experience. How come focusing on core values stuck with you throughout all that time, and why do you place such an emphasis on it today at Vivacity?
So I think having solid core values, or something that you can align to and feel very at ease with, is a fundamental part of creating an identity for an organization. And it does a number of things, not necessarily directly, but by association almost. You sort of set the feel of the type of people that you want to work with, right? If you fit these categories of core values, then you'll probably do very well at Vivacity, right? If you do not, then there's a chance that it's probably not a good fit for you, and there's probably better companies out there that you could align to. So it certainly helps set the type of people that we want to work with and how we want to grow. It sets an awesome vision of hey, this is the mountain we want to climb, right? And so that's setting that direction, I think, is one of the core aspects of running a company, and how you set a direction and set a goal for everybody to rally around. And obviously, it's things that we want to be super aligned to, and I'm really passionate about. And we have lifelong development, right? Paving the way, being client focused, right? These are all really fundamental things, especially things like lifelong development, right? We always want to be sort of growing ourselves and moving in the right direction. I would point out that this wasn't a start Vivacity, set core values, now we're good, right? This was have an idea of what it would look like. Then we were lucky enough for you to join the team, and you were open enough to be, very forthcoming with ideas, and there was a lot of iteration, right? Yeah. And then we sort of fell on something that was comfortable for you, for me, and for the team as we were expanding, and we could rally around. And one of our advisors, Lindsay Sill, she mentioned to me earlier on as we were sort of going through this, and she did look through our core values, and she's like, well, these are all great, but are they really core values unless you can speak to them every month? Like, you can show that you're doing these every month. And I thought that was pretty neat. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And we made some changes based on that. And so I think, again, it's an iterative process around this. And
yeah, for sure. Building that team identity. And you said something that resonated with me, like something that we can all rally behind. I think that, it was probably the glue that held us all together in the start as we're trying to figure out exactly, where do we want to go? Do we want to pursue this path or that path? And this was kind of the common theme, an oasis in a desert of uncertainty, if you will. Cool. So, as you pointed out, you were the first Vivacity employee, and I joined a few months after the party had already started. I'm curious from your perspective, can you tell me the story of how that came to be? Like, how did you bridge the gap from you starting this, having an idea, all the way to the point where you're able to bring in your first hire and maybe start scaling some initiatives in that way?
Yeah, so the sort of the period between starting Vivacity, which is almost 2 years ago now, which is quite amazing from my perspective, and then you joining, which was probably about 5 months after Vivacity was incorporated. That time period was trying to figure out a little bit about what we want to do, what we're good at, and I had an idea about what we would be probably good at. Bringing on some clients, right, and generating revenue, like super important. Like you can't underestimate the value of actually generating revenue. Like it is. That's why it's sort of the top line of every financial statement, because or the income statement, because that's why it's so important, right? So generating revenue for the organization and bringing on some clients that were sort of somewhat aligned with the direction of the organization, and then saying, well, we have a little bit of success there in the first 3 or 4 months, and then going to a good organization which is established in Canada called the Business Development Bank of Canada, the BDC, and going to them and saying, hey, look, can we borrow some money and sort of set ourselves up with some cheap debt at the time. It's now quite expensive given interest rates, but giving ourselves the runway to bring someone awesome like you on board to help us, progress the company, and so that was sort of the period. It's all a bit of a wash right now. It's a long time ago.
That's really nice. Yeah, interesting, the sort of process to make that a reality and what went on behind the scenes. So thank you for sharing that. More of a reflective question, I guess, for you now is, as you said, it's been a couple of years since that happened. And in this couple of years, I feel like I've definitely learned a ton, and I can imagine that being true for everybody at the company as well. So I'm wondering if you had the opportunity to go back in time and give yourself some advice, knowing what you know now about the journey and what we've been through, what, if any, advice would you give your slightly younger self for this process?
It's going to be really hard for me to say something that's not cliche.
I kind of set you up for that, so my bad.
Every good saying is pretty much taken at this point. I would honestly not change anything or give myself any particularly good advice.
Interesting. Why?
Because it's a journey, right? And it's like, well, why skip the steps of learning and the growth that you are going to undertake, right? There's no quick fix for getting rich. There's no quick fix for, improving anything that's meaningful in this world. So enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. Again, cliche, I apologize, but it's so true. Like there's nothing better than going through that journey and the ups and the downs that go with it. So no advice, no suggestions, just hunker down and do your best, right?
Wow. That is cliche, but it's deep. That's, really interesting. I wonder if that way of conceptualizing things kind of helps navigate the uncertainties and the risks and everything else associated with a startup on the day-to-day. So that's really interesting to hear. Okay, another question I have for you. One of the main characteristics of our team at Vivacity, just kind of looking around at the people that we have on board, is for the most part, we're all comprised of early career professionals. And there's a number of very experienced career professionals that we tap on for specific projects here and there. But I'm curious from your perspective, being at the helm of all of this, and as you said, right, trying to maximize our opportunities or chances of success. How do you view working with early career professionals? Like, why go down this path? Why not just hire, some well-seasoned people and just have them take it away, bring us on later on for much cheaper and, step to profit.
I just want to stay young.
You personally?
I just want to feel
I've
young.
been noticing some blood missing.
Feel young, Stefano. I just want to feel young. I've worked with very young professionals. I've worked with more mature professionals as well. I don't think there's necessarily a perfect formula for a startup. I like the idea that people are not particularly weathered about certain environments. They are willing to try, make mistakes, fail, learn from those. And, that freshness comes out of people who probably haven't been in the industry for a very long time. So there's certainly that advantage, I think. I also think that we would be remiss by not taking advantage of the university that I mentioned earlier, Thompson Rivers University, that pumps out some wonderful students each year. And one of the things that I noticed when I first moved to Kamloops is a lot of students come through TRU and then it's, well, what next, right? And how do you keep that talent in Kamloops or in Canada? And, who's going to give those people a chance or a risk and take that on? And so there's part of me that, we have cherry-picked some awesome students, people who have come through that, again, like yourself. But I just think it's massively advantageous to keep smart, bright people like you in Canada in the community and just making this place a whole lot better. So part of the reason is right there. Cool.
Just out there trying to do good in the world, are you?
Maybe.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
That's really interesting to hear. I'm wondering just on that front too, like so far, what's been some of the scarier parts of, making that decision, perhaps handling projects while having only earlier career talent available, or the most surprising parts?
I think the most challenging part is sort of walking people through, you learn you have an education for sort of 3 or 4 years, whatever it might be, and then you hit the workplace. And unfortunately, education university doesn't always set you up particularly well. Like, there's a lot of differences between a work environment and an education, right? Some of those are very obvious where, you get a paycheck, right, for doing certain things and adding value, right? At university, you're there just to sort of follow instructions and appease a certain, set of criteria. In the corporate world, there's a lot of uncertainty, which, you don't often get. Which you don't often get in the education place. There's unknowns about how to do projects or do things fresh. And so I'd say that's some of the challenges, is that education, I don't think still has got it 100% right in terms of teaching people how to come into the workforce and actually be successful very quickly. And that is a hugely valuable thing. If you can take students who are very adept at working in a corporate world extremely quickly, well, the payoff for hiring those people is now dramatically reduced. So why would companies not invest in hiring more people quicker, right? So there's certainly that as a challenge. But I mean, look, the upsides are vast in terms of just, working with bright young people who are keen, interested, making a difference, aligned to some of the core values that we have. I think that would be
interesting. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. I want to poke you on a little bit more of a personal note now, which is in the process of starting this company. You also, as you mentioned, you have a young family, and Sarah, you two are married and you have 3 beautiful children. I'm wondering, in the process of starting a business, how what does that look like when you're trying to balance a family and, other aspects of life, especially at this stage where you guys are now? Like, how's this journey been for you all?
Tough question. Not in the sense that it's like, I'm not concern about revealing too many personal things, but it's a tough question because you don't get it right all the time, and I certainly don't. And it's evaluating continually about what are the key things in your life. What are the undisputable things that you can't do without, right? And then everything else becomes secondary. And so I'd say, I definitely haven't got it right, but putting my wife and my kids first as much as possible has been a key learning point for me over the years. Again, don't get it right very often, or probably should get it right more often. And then, Vivacity and the work we're doing here. And then, I love to play sport and I love to do all those other things that keep me very centered in life, and those things sort of trickle on. And any given week it could be very different, but you sort of got to always find your bedrocks and go, okay, well, this is, if these two things are next to each other, which one takes priority? And then, family, kids, wife, all those things often should take priority.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
Hope one day I get to find out. But yeah, that's interesting. Just continually evaluating those priorities and being conscious. And you don't get it right all the time, as you said. So it's comforting.
Yeah, 100%.
In many ways. Okay, I guess the final question on this front, just touching on a little bit of your experience and previous, before starting Vivacity and then after starting Vivacity. How have the last 2 years differed running a startup in a smaller company than your career before this? Any kind of major areas you'd highlight, points of difference or points of similarity?
So you're asking about what's the same about running Vivacity versus the corporate world that I've been involved in previously? Yeah. I mean, look, there's fundamentals in business that are unquestionable, right? Companies have to generate revenue. They have to provide a service or a product to clients. There has to be some value there, right? And without those fundamental things, like, the company does not exist. You can't live off government grants and funding forever, although
we can try.
And then you have to be able to manage those finances, sustainably grow the company, not expand too quickly, not expand too slowly, all those things. When you have a startup or run a business from the ground up, you're involved in all those things extremely quickly, which in a corporate world you're not, right? Typically you have a box, you've got to stay in that box, and you've got to do those certain things until you grow into sort of management and an executive team, and then you get sort of broader responsibilities. But running a startup, if you have the fortitude, then it's just everything all at once. And that's, it's a hard ask for a lot of people. And as I said, I don't get it right all the time, but the interesting thing is, though, I don't think I would do a very good job of this now if I hadn't had all the experience I'd had previously. And the saying is that statistically, the entrepreneurs who start a company that are successful will last beyond 5 years. They normally start companies 38 to 40, something along those lines. And they always point to the fact that it's all that experience prior that has led them to that. And I can't see any reason why I wouldn't disagree with that, because that experience has led me to being able to do what I do today and do it hopefully somewhat effectively.
Yeah, I mean, we're still alive, up and running. So
yeah,
it's been 2 years. I bet, if you weren't doing things right, we wouldn't be here having this chat right now.
100%.